In this tutorial we're going to look at putting some interior fittings into the Arkitainer now. But before we do that, we need a little bit of a tidy up of what we've done. It's obviously getting quite complicated. There's lots of separate parts now, and we have loads and loads of parts in our part list. So it's really important that we take a little bit of time just to name these. To do that, right click, rename. Okay, when you hover over the part as well, it does highlight exactly what it is so you can tell. So that is the original Arkitainer. Okay, part 2 then is the wooden window hole. So if I rename this, and that is the wooden window. I'm going to just work through all of these parts now and name them really quickly. So you'll need to do the same. As I've been working through naming all of these parts, I have noticed as well that there is some parts that we could join together to make one, to make this process a whole lot easier. So my bifold door 1 actually joins onto 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we're going to join all of them together with a boolean. So all you need to do is holding Control on your keyboard, press bifold door 1, scroll down and find your next bifold door. So there it is, part 13 for me. It might be different for you. And then I'm going to keep hovering down. There we go, part 16, 19 and 22. And I'm going to right click on those that I've selected and Boolean, and I'm going to make sure Union is selected here and click tick. And now I only actually have bifold door. Okay, I've limited the number of parts. You could also do a little wooden slat that joins all of these wooden parts together, which would mean they're all then touching, and Boolean those as well, which might be a good idea to limit the actual number of parts in your part list. I'm going to carry on finish naming all of my parts now, or as many as I can, before I have a look at the interior fit out. When renaming all of my parts here, the final ones I'm not going to name because there's so many of them, they have all come from the shop sign. But what I've noticed is the shop sign is actually at the moment a permanent part of the Arkitainer, and I want it to be a separate part. So what I'm going to do is hover over the extrude in my list, my history timeline here. I'm just hovering over all the different parts until I find that extrude, and there it is, extrude 16, and you can see it's highlighting orange as I'm hovering over it. I'm going to right click on the extrude and I'm going to edit that, and what I should see is that it's actually been an add, and that should have been a new part. So change that to new and we'll click tick, and the way we see if that has worked or not is it should change colour. Okay, it looks very similar still there, so I've got my concerns about whether that has worked or not, but let's hover over all of the different parts and see where we've got to. So there we go, part 23, it's actually a separate part now, which is fantastic. So right click, I'm going to rename that as sign stand, and then I'm going to change the colour. So right click, edit appearance, I'm just going to make it a very slightly darker grey so I can see that it's a little bit different. Okay, and click tick. You can now see it's different, but the important bit is it's a separate part, and we can check that again. Just hide it, make it disappear, and put it back in again when you're ready. So now let's move on to the interior fittings. We're going to put a counter in this corner to display all of the baked goods that are on sale in my bakery. So to start this part, I'm going to hide all of the bits that aren't necessary, that I don't need at the moment. So I'm literally going to hide everything except for the Arkitainer where I'm building this. Okay, so what we can do is click the eyes by every single one, or I'm hoping that you can highlight multiple and then you can hide all of them together. Okay, so if we click on one, hold in shift on your keyboard, go to the bottom and click in the last one, right click, and you can select hide. So now we're only seeing the Arkitainer, we've not deleted anything. So they've not gone. We can just unhide them and get them back at any point. But we can see inside this shape now where we want to start building our counter. And we're going to start by making it a solid block. So I'm going to click on the floor. I'm going to click on sketch, which we're very used to now, and I'm going to draw a rectangle roughly where I want the counter. I just want it coming out of this side here. So people are able to come into the shop, they're able to get served at the counter and then leave. And let's add some dimensions to get it all fitting quite nicely. Remember, we always have to dimension our work in this. I'm going to make it 400 deep. It has to be quite a small countertop because we're working inside of an Arkitainer. Okay, I'm going to make it 3 meters long, so that's 3,000 millimeters, and it's already touching the side here because we locked that on when we created it. I'm then going to create the space where the worker would stand, so we're going to have to give them plenty of room. So we'll make that 700 to give them room to get behind and actually work. Okay, in fact, let's make that a tiny little bit bigger. So using your dimension tool again, let's change a 700 if we can to 800, and then we can create a little notch coming out of the side here as well. So let's draw that, locking onto the corner, dimension the same width again, so we're going to keep that at 400, and then that is just going to come out a tiny little bit, so maybe 200 millimeters, just to give a little wrap around, and it's got space for the worker to get in and out of the side there. Tick. We can finish that sketch. We're now going to extrude that sketch using the extrude tool. We'll click on sketch 20 instead of clicking on separate parts, and that's going to have to come up, say 700 high, and we'll just zoom out a little bit to check that that's looking about right. So in terms of proportions, for me, I'm very happy with the look of that at the moment. We're going to create a bit of a display case and more detail on the back of this, but for now that's good. Remember though, it's a new part, so we need to select new at the top here and then finish. And just to keep up our good habits, if we go to the bottom, we're going to rename this as our counter. Okay, so we're getting in good habits and doing that straight away to save us time in the long run. I then want it to be wooden in appearance. I'm going to right click on that, I'm going to edit the appearance, and I'm going to select my trusted wooden shade. There we go. So I now have the counter in my Arkitainer, all inside, dimensioned perfectly, ready for the next part to go up. Good luck.